This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 53 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we have somebody who's done it all: reporter, columnist, author, radio, TV, podcasts. Michael Holley is joining us. Michael, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. You've been covering Boston sports for a long time. What kind of pressure were the Celtics under entering the NBA Finals, and what kind of pressure are they under now to close the series out?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to this, man. I know we've talked a couple of times in the past, so I've always enjoyed it. So happy to see the podcast episode. What did you say, 53?
53,
53, I have to find some numerology, some kind of connection to make 53 significant for me. But yeah, to answer your question, tremendous pressure. Look, once they made the trade, Brandon, for Porzingis and then brought on Drew Holiday, it was clear they had to not only get to the NBA Finals and win the finals. So that's what the Celtics have been all about that since 2022. When they lost to the Warriors, the standard was you got to win a championship. If you don't win a championship, you're a disappointment. So they went up 3-0. Went down 0-3 to Miami last year, came back to force the game 7. Everybody expected something that had never been done in NBA history. Everybody expected, okay, you already forced the game 7, so now you got to win it on your home floor. They got blown out by Miami last year, and so the standard was championship. So they are. That's what the whole season has been about. And I guess on one hand, that's cool because this is what people expect, and these are the expectations. On the other hand, I can see some fans saying, "Can you just let me enjoy the season?"
Right.
Can you just let me enjoy basketball without always reminding me that my favorite team hasn't proven anything until they win a championship? So it's been that tension has been there the entire year.
And I should note we're recording this on Tuesday. The podcast is going to drop Friday. Thankfully, because of the long drawn out final schedule, that means we're only going to be missing one game. But after
what time on Friday?
Early Friday morning, very early.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I was going to say,
yeah. No, we'll be out long before the Friday night's game. So after 64 regular season wins and the seemingly easy path to the finals, what has the confidence level been from the fan base throughout this run?
Well, I think just to be honest, I think we got to make a distinction between the fan base and the media. Fan base is extremely confident. Fan base is optimistic. The Celtics get great support from their fans, and people fall in love. There's an old song, "I Fall in Love Too Easily." That's for the Celtics fans. They fall in love very easily with their players. So anybody who's been here, they come back and they get a lot of love. Like Antoine Walker never won a championship. Antoine still gets a lot of love when he's in Boston. Isaiah Thomas, the other Isaiah Thomas, the little guy, gets love here. I mean, even guys who were here, people remember Jay Crowder being a part of a team that didn't win. He comes here and he gets some applause. So the fans will always be supportive. Now, media-wise, locally and nationally, there's this statement that, or just this feeling that the Celtics are very good, but not good enough to get the job done. And so there are a lot of stories around that, and we keep coming back to that. And I feel like that's not going to change until they win it. So there's still not great confidence. And look, small sample size. For example, let me just give an example. Before the series started, ESPN talked to had 17 writers give predictions. I know predictions sometimes suck. You don't want to give predictions. Oh God, I got to do predictions. But 17 writers gave their predictions, and 9 of the 17 So most of them picked the Mavericks.
Yeah.
And I think that happened because people look at the Celtics as chokers or just not being able to handle the big stage.
Yeah. That, and I think people had this expectation that Porzingis wasn't going to be able to come back and fit right in, and kind of he proved that wrong pretty quickly during game one. What did you think about Stephen A. Smith reporting Jaylen Brown's attitude has hurt his marketability?
I just thought it was, if you're going to have a report like that, look, I think there are two separate things. I think the way Stephen presented it was unfair, because what we saw was he's looking down. He says, hey, I got a source right here, an NBA source, who says no one likes him, or he's got his I'm better than you attitude is off-putting, and everybody knows it. So that's one source. So the unfairness of it to me was you're going with one source, and we don't know who the source is. Like, if you tell me, Brandon, right now, Michael, I've got a source who says nobody likes you. Now, I would tell you, I know there are some people, I know there are a lot of people who don't like me, but I need more context for that. It could be an ex-girlfriend. It could be somebody who I used to work with and didn't get along with. It could be somebody I went to school with. It could be somebody who bullied me. Like, I don't know. I don't know who that person is. So in the case of Jaylen Brown, is that somebody who wanted to represent him and he turned them down? Was that an agent? Is that a player that he doesn't get along with? Is it a coach who he's talked shit to? Like, you just don't know. So I think that was unfair overall. And then you also have to say, what is Jaylen Brown? What marketing opportunities does he seek? You know, like some guys are selective. Some guys will take anything that comes to them. So I thought that was unfair. I think in today's environment, if you are an NBA player, or if you're a good athlete, even if you're not all that likable, whatever that means, you're going to have marketing opportunities if you want them. They may not be the number one marketing opportunity out there for a given athlete, but you'll have some opportunities to make some extra money.
Is there a power struggle at all between Brown and Tatum?
No, there isn't. I think and there probably was at one point. I just feel like the timeline this is not just the Jays. It's not just Brown and Tatum. I think this exists for most NBA players, especially coming to the league. The first thing you want to do is prove that you belong in the league. So you want to prove that you belong, that you weren't a wasted draft pick or overhyped draft pick. You want to prove that you belong, then you want to be an all-star. That comes very quickly. I want to be an all-star. Then all-NBA. I want to be an all-NBA player. And then usually around year 4, year 5, especially if somebody from your draft class has won a championship, then you start to become passionate about winning a championship. I'd love to tell you that most NBA players I've covered come into the league and immediately want to win championships. They don't. They want to establish themselves first, their brand, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And then championship stuff takes over. So Jaylen Brown is in year 8. Jayson Tatum's in year 7. So I would say when they were in year 3 and 4, year 4 and 5, maybe there was that, hey, whose team is this? Or, hey, what about me? This guy is all NBA, but what about me? But now I think they are aligned in wanting to win a championship. And it really doesn't matter if one guy wins finals MVP and one guy is getting a lot of the attention. The irony is, I don't think either one of them is going to be finals MVP. I think it's going to be Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
That's just me.
How is Joe Mazzulla perceived by Boston media?
Not well right now. See, and this is the beauty of this. I'm going to write about this. You talk about all the things I do. I still love to write. And so I'm going to write about this later today. Do it. See, you're holding me accountable. I'm saying this right now. I'm like, God, why am I saying this? I'm making myself publicly accountable that I actually have to write this damn thing. But I've been working on a rough draft. Like mentally, it's been there. I'm going to put some things down later today and probably have it later in the week. But there's something about the NBA that's cool where you can, every summer, if you're on a good team, you can change your story. So it's just an opportunity to change your story. So for Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you can change your story by winning a championship. And you will join a long line of people who have done that before as well. Like Paul Pierce with the Celtics, before he was champion Paul Pierce, NBA Finals MVP Paul Pierce, he was a pain in the ass, perceived that way in Boston. As a matter of fact, 2 years before they won a championship, people wanted him traded. They were begging, like talk radio here was just wall to wall, trade Paul Pierce, because they had lost a series. They lost a 7-game series to the Pacers at home, Rick Carlisle's Pacers, the first time, lost at home to the Pacers. And Paul Pierce just really was acted like in a very immature way in the series. He pretended he got fouled. He pretended like he had a broken jaw. He came to a press conference with this thing wrapped over his head. He was like, "I broke my jaw," and he was like, "Well, no, I'm just kidding. I just want to let you know that the officials have it out to, they're out to get me." Like, so he moped around all the time. People were all set with Paul Pierce, but then they bring in Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett. The story changes, and the story changes for a lot of people. It changes for LeBron James. He's just a individual talent who's never going to win a championship, goes to Miami and he wins. Jokic, hey, talented player. Is he going to win a championship? He wins a championship last year. Same thing with Giannis. Hey, is he overhyped? No, he wins a championship. So it's an opportunity for players to change their story, but also coaches. Last year, Joe Mazzulla, Marcus Smart called him horrible publicly. He said had done a bad job. And he really, I don't think he did a bad job last year, but I do think he was a liability. I think he was a liability at times in playoff series along the way, not just against Miami, but against Philadelphia and against Atlanta too. So he has stepped up his game. I think he is the perfect coach for this team, even though, nobody would say, hey, he's a top 3 coach in the league. He's perfect for this team because at times he's so literal. He's so on topic and so focused. And what's been the biggest criticism of the Celtics is sometimes they lose focus. And sometimes they take things for granted. Joe Mazzulla doesn't let that happen. So if they win a championship, not only will it change his reputation, my prediction here right now, I'm going to make a prediction to you. He's going to talk a lot of shit. If they win, he's going to come out. He's going to name names. Hey, I may even be on the list. I don't know. I hope so. I'll be flattered if I am, but he's going to talk a lot.
What was the biggest criticism of him? When did it start? Was it just the fact that he's not Ime Udoka? Was it the fact that they lost last year in Game 7? Was it in-game decisions, or was it
all of that?
All of it.
All of that. And last year, now he's gotten better at it this year. I remember saying on the air last year, does Joe Mazzulla know he's allowed to use timeouts, that they don't charge you for them, and that there's nothing wrong with using a timeout? He would not call timeouts in situations that were obvious. And I know some coaches say, hey, forget it. I'm not going to call a timeout. Offensively, we got what we want. I don't want to give the defense time to set up. But he would never call timeouts. And the Celtics would just falter in these late game situations, and he would defend it. Or he would become very defensive about their over-reliance, the Celtics' over-reliance on three-point shots. And he'd say, oh, that's not too many threes. I wish we could shoot 50 or 60 threes. That was one of his comments that he tried to walk back. And I think the team has evolved from that point last year. Like, they just won Game 2 of the NBA Finals. They shot 10 for 39 from three-point range. And they won the game because they weren't 10 for 49. They still went into the paint.
Yeah.
they still took what was available to them and didn't just say, hey, this is what we do, and eventually one of these things is going to go down. They took some threes, but they also took it to the basket. And I will give him credit for that. Defensively, they are more intense defensively. They're tougher defensively than they were 2 years ago under Ime. Some of that is Joe Mazzulla, and some of it is the guys that they added, Porzingis and Drew Holiday especially.
I know your TV co-host Mike Felger feels Mazzulla is a liability. Did you hear him attempt to tell JJ Redick that he felt Mazzulla could be outcoached in the playoffs?
That was what an interview. That was an interview like now see, I know Felger. See, I've worked with him. I know how Felger operates. I know what he's trying to do. I'm not sure, and maybe you are. You think JJ Redick had a good scouting report on who Michael Felger was before he agreed to do that interview?
No, it became very clear very quickly that Redick had no interest in doing that interview.
He didn't want to do the
I don't
go through the Felger experience, but
I don't know how it was pitched to him, how he was sold on doing the interview or what, but like just he did not want to answer any question or have any sort of back and forth.
What I wanted to see, what I'd love to get a hold of, any kind of video, post-interview video, JJ Redick talking to the person who booked him for the interview.
Yeah.
What the hell was that? Why'd you make me do that? But I've told Felger this before. I work with him for now, just direct. I've known him for a long time, obviously, but I've worked with him on this show for now 3 years. I think we started in March of 21. And I've told him on the air, hey man, you're really good at what you do. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know what you're trying to get me to do. I enjoy it. You're actually really good at it. So I enjoy the sparring with him, and I think he's excellent at it. You got to be in the mood for it.
Yeah.
And he knows he's not for everybody, but I like the energy and the creativity he brings to the job.
Yeah, and you would think with Redick playing in Philadelphia, like he would have an idea of what Northeast sports radio is. So like when you're going on a Boston radio station, like you have to expect some of that.
You said it. That's it. It's the Northeast. Philadelphia, New York, Boston. We're all at the family reunion. We all have a little something that's off about us. We can go from just kind of calm, and this is not just in sports radio. This is in the streets of Philly, New York, Boston. We can go from calm to crazy in about 2.5 seconds. So you got to know that, and it's I enjoy that. See, I grew up in the Midwest, so I know I was raised to be rational.
Yeah,
I was raised to be rational, but I've spent 30 years in Boston. So I know that it's like yin and yang. I got a rational side and I got a crazy side. I wouldn't have it any other way.
How was Kyrie Irving's tenure in Boston?
Oh, Shakespearean. It was like a Shakespearean tragedy because you could see all the things it could have been. Like to this day, I haven't checked lately. I used to check every year after Kyrie left Boston, and I would check his assist total and look at his efficiency numbers and see if he topped his first year in Boston. But if you look at his numbers, his first couple of years in Boston, especially that first year, he played some of his best basketball of his career in Boston. Assist totals I don't think were ever higher than they were in Boston. When he got out of his own way, he was tremendous. Not only played 60 games that first year, he got hurt, and that was a year. He gets hurt. The team goes, and this is part of the problem too. I'm not going to put it all on him. He was a big part of it, but I'm not going to put it all on him. He came in, the city embraced him immediately. He embraced the city. He plays the first 60 games. They were great games. He was awesome. But then he got hurt. The team went to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals without him.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown in his second year, Jayson Tatum as a rookie, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, that group. Already Gordon Hayward is out, so he's not a factor in that. And these guys, at one point in Game 7, Tatum dunks on LeBron and then bumps him on the way by. They're all excited that they're going to go to the NBA Finals way ahead of schedule without Kyrie, and then it didn't happen. So when Kyrie comes back healthy, Gordon Hayward is making his way back. They expect to just resume where they were, but these young guys are like, hey, we went to Game 7 without y'all. I don't want to be a backup anymore. Terry Rozier didn't want to be a backup point guard. Tatum had gone to another level, felt like he'd gone to another level as a rookie. Jaylen Brown did too. So that team was probably the most dysfunctional team of the Danny Ainge, Brad Stevens era. And Kyrie just shut down on people. He shut down on his teammates. He shut down on the staff. Somebody told me the other day, you'll love this. Now I heard this from a good source, but somebody told me the other day that there was one of the assistant coaches used to keep a daily notebook. How was Kyrie an asshole today? And so but he had a lot of information on it. And so it's too bad, because if Kyrie had just relaxed a bit, if he had just relaxed and let things come to him, that was a hell of a team, man. Think about those names I just mentioned.
Yeah.
I didn't even get into Al Horford was on the team too. So you take Gordon Hayward out of it, you've got Kyrie, Jayson Tatum, and Jaylen Brown with a role player like Al Horford, another role player like Marcus Smart. Are you kidding me? Pretty good squad. But that's why I said I wouldn't put it all on Kyrie, because I think Danny Ainge looked at that team and he was not quite satisfied either. His idea was he wanted to pair Kyrie with Anthony Davis. So it's not like, hey, this is a team, we're going to watch this team grow and we're going to win multiple championships. He had some chips. And I think he really, really was fascinated. Danny always was fascinated with Anthony Davis, and he wanted to pair those guys together.
How was Kyrie with the media? Because I think his tenure in Brooklyn was polarizing. There were some battles. And then now you see him in Dallas, and everything seems to be going so smoothly. How was he with the media in Boston?
He was great at first. It's just like his tenure here. He was great at first. I remember some of his first press conferences, and he was very generous, and you can see it. He can be thoughtful, he can be charismatic, he could be funny, and so he was all of those things in the beginning, and then something switched, and he just decided, hey, this is not for me. He was not happy. He was not happy with Boston, and then when the speculation started, and it was correct speculation right around the All-Star break of his second year. He's seen talking with Kevin Durant, and their speculation was, hey, these guys are trying to plot. They're going to team up and they're going to play together. And he took great issue with that. Oh, you don't know what I'm trying to do. And that's exactly what he was trying to do. And that started the foundation of the Brooklyn championship aspiration. Kyrie and Kevin Durant starting some kind of renaissance in Brooklyn. So after that point, after the All-Star break of his second year, he didn't talk to anybody. They had a long time, the Celtics do, he just retired this year after 43 years, a long-time broadcaster named Mike Gorman, who was a legend in New England. Everybody likes Mike Gorman. Mike Gorman is not a hot taker. He's not a slasher. He loves the Celtics. He grew up in Dorchester. I mean, he really loves the Celtics. But Kyrie stopped talking to him. He wouldn't even talk to him. He lost faith in Danny Ainge. He lost faith in Brad Stevens. So he left.
Has the existence of Barstool Sports had an influence over Boston sports media over the years? Has it changed Boston sports media at all?
I'd say, yeah. I'd say changed it to the point of expanding it. Like when I first got here, I said I've been here 30 years. So I first got here in 1994. So in 1994, Boston media was pretty simple to figure out. newspapers were king. So Boston Globe, Boston Herald in Boston. Okay, that was the top of the sports media mountain. You got there, you were everything. And then, sports talk radio was there, but in 1994, you didn't have two sports talk radio stations. And the sports talk radio station that you did have, WEEI, it was going through a programming change. So you had radio hosts there, but it wasn't like it was today. Radio was still important, but not as important as the newspaper guys. So newspaper here, traditional newspaper, traditional radio, no podcast. There was no internet in 1994. Okay, think about it. There's no website. And then after that, you had, the TV people, and the TV people were there, but they didn't get as much time. They didn't get as, you got maybe 3 minutes. They don't even get that now, 3 or 4 minutes on your nightly newscast. And then I think sports talk radio exploded. And then Barstool came in with a different voice and just reached people. And I'll give credit. I'll give credit to so Bill Simmons as the Boston sports guy in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
On AOL, You've Got Mail. All right. So AOL there was Simmons, and then a few years later, Barstool Sports handing out the paper on the subway. And doing different things like, hey, we got some sports, but we got some culture. We got some things that will make you pay attention. Some people are gonna love it, some people are gonna hate it, but we embrace who we are. And so I think that just kind of changed the dynamic. Then you brought in, maybe 7-8 years after that. Now you got a second sports talk radio station, and it really changed it. But you've got a lot of people who are on the national stage. This is why it definitely has an effect on Boston. A lot of people on the national stage grew up here or did a lot of work here. So how could they not? Like Simmons is a national name, but he went to Boston University and spent some time here. Portnoy, he still is hanging out here. I saw him courtside for game 2 with his, Kyrie sucks.
The Kyrie
stuff on. So it's you definitely have to give credit where it's due.
At what point were you aware of Barstool? Like, were you aware of them as they were passing out the newspapers in the subways?
I was. I'll tell you. I probably, it is such a random story. I probably was aware of Barstool in the first couple of weeks because. And at the time, I think I was still working for the Globe. I was working for the Globe, and a friend of mine is work for the city, some role in the city. And she said, hey, have you heard about this thing? My friend, Dave is starting this sports newspaper. You should check it out. It's called Barstool Sports. She had one of the first copies. So that's how I found out about it. Like it was it was really the first, whatever the first year was of Barstool. Yeah. That's when I found, like the first month. That's when I found out about it from a friend of Portnoy's.
Who is more popular among Boston sports fans, Portnoy or Simmons?
Ooh, that's a good one. I do see a bunch of the Barstool stickers where I don't even expect to see them.
Yeah,
I see them on car. Man, you see them in the suburbs. You see them on college campuses. I can tell you this. Okay, more popular. All right. So I teach at BU. I teach sports journalism classes there and non-sports journalism. Just want to point that out. I teach some news courses as well. But when I walk around campus and when I walk around the class and I look at my students, they all have their laptops. I'm a laptop down professor, by the way, Brandon. Laptops down, okay? Because I know you're shopping. I know what you're doing. Okay, laptops down. But when I ask for the laptops to come down, they always have something on their laptops. And I see a bunch of Barstool stuff. So I would say it might be Portnoy. And when I ask these beginning sports journalists, these aspiring sports journalists, what they want to do and who they like, because you gotta keep up. Hey, what's relevant? What's important to me doesn't even matter. Like some of my goats, they haven't even heard of. Isn't that nuts? They haven't heard of. But for them, what they value is some of that. They like, a lot of them want to do. They like the freedom, and they like the wide landscape that Barstool provides, and they're less interested in. I'd say most of them. Now, some students are interested in traditional media, but most of them want to do something else. I'll tell you a funny story. I asked last semester. I was like, all right, so one of the greatest game story writers ever, game stories, right? Who writes game stories anymore? So one of the greatest game story writers ever, Bob Ryan. Who's heard of Bob Ryan? No hands go up.
Wow.
I said, are you kidding me? You guys have never heard of Bob Ryan? Nope. So how about Jackie McMullen? Couple hands. I said, Jackie McMullen is one of the greatest interviewers ever. She is in the Hall of Fame. But part of this is why I have on my syllabus at the very beginning of the semester, I assign them to somebody in sports media history, current and past. You got it. You can't be in the class if you don't know how we got here. So some people, I got to assign you a research paper on Bob Ryan. I'm going to assign you a research paper on Jack McMullen. And I have up and comers in the business too. And people have written about Jamie Erdahl. They've written about Monica McNutt, Jamel Hill. Like, I just have them. And I tell them, I want you to write about people. I don't want you to think that I'm saying, yes, be like them or not. I just want you to know. So I have them write about people that I agree with, people who I disagree with, just so they have a broad base of knowledge.
How was the experience of doing a daily radio show in Boston?
It's incredible. It was great. It's one of those, I always say I like these jobs that teach you something. And so radio is a great teacher, because if I'm writing, so I'll make the comparison. So I wrote a column for the Globe for 6 or 7 years. So if I write a column, I'm sitting down, I got my idea. I'm going to develop my idea, whether I want to interview somebody for my column or just go with, hey, this is my take, and I'm not inviting any other voices into this. This is just my column. I write it. Then it's out there in the atmosphere to be judged, picked apart, whatever it is. Sports radio, you start on the air at, I did 10 to 2, and I also did 2 to 6. So you start at 10, you start at 2 with an idea. 10:30, 10:35, some callers come in. We already talked about Boston, how passionate people are. So there's somebody who reinforces your idea. There's somebody who challenges your idea. By 2 p.m. or by 6 p.m., maybe you still have the same position, but it's open. You've opened it up to a public conversation, and now you've got another idea off of the original idea. It is just a great vehicle for public conversation and figuring out what really matters to people. And so I did that for 13 years, and I got to know myself better, but I also got to know Boston better, just being out there every day talking to people for 13 years. And I think my current co-host, Mike Felger, is brilliant at it. I think his secret formula, he's got two things that are elite that people kind of underrate for him. One, he's got elite news judgment, elite. And not just for sports, he just knows news. And so it goes back to his days at the Boston Herald. And also, he just knows how to get people. He knows how to push that button that will get people to respond. He did it very naturally last night. We were on the air, and he's asking another reporter, Andrew Callahan, who also works for the Herald. He asked Callahan a question. Callahan gave him an answer that was that Felger deemed, to be milquetoast, pretty much. Like, okay. He said, no. He edited himself on it. Let me ask it this way. And so he just kind of changed it. He moved it over a little bit. And then Callahan is kind of like reeling back a little bit. I said, okay, there he just does that. That's just what he does. And that's why he is who he is in Boston. Ask JJ Redick.
What happened to WEEI? Like when you were there in afternoon drive, even you weren't beating Felger and Maz, but you were getting good ratings numbers. And at the time, Kirk and Callahan were going back and forth with Toucher and Rich. So how did the station go from getting those double-digit ratings to 2 shares now?
Yeah. It's I wish I knew. I'm surprised by it. And no, I'm not just surprised by it. I'm shocked by it.
Yeah.
I just never imagined that it would get to this point because of where we are, because of what Boston is. The city can certainly handle 2 sports talk radio stations, like most of the cities that we mentioned. New York can do it and is doing it. Philly, same thing with Philly, and Boston can as well. I don't even have a good answer because look, when you leave a place, let's be honest. When you leave, and you're gone, you say, okay, I want them to miss me a little bit. I want them to miss me. I don't want things to go, hey, it's business as usual. He's gone. We haven't missed a step. As a matter of fact, we're better without him. So you don't want that, but you also don't want the place you used to work to just tank.
Yeah.
And go to bankruptcy. So I think if I had to give one answer, say why is it? Why are we looking at this situation? It's like anything else. It's the sports teams we talk about. It's the media outlets we love. It is the top. It's always the top. You got to go to the top. When things are going well, you got to go to the top. When things are going poorly, you got to go to the top. So I do remember while I was there, and this is like, so I said I was there for 13 years. This must have been year 9 or year 10. And I do this with all the jobs that I have. I just kind of do like, either every 6 months or every year. So, just depends on the gig. I do like a scouting report on what I saw, what happened, what do I need to do to improve, why did things go this way? And so and I wish I could, if I had known we were going here, I would have brought up the document, no secrets here. I wrote, this is the old Cleveland Browns. I said, we're the Cleveland Browns. We look like the Cleveland Browns. We look like we can't make a decision. Because at that point, I said, we're going to pay for this. We keep just jumping around. We're a little skittish. I was doing middays with Dale Arnold. They moved out Dale Arnold. They moved me with Ordway. Then they moved out Ordway and they brought in Mike Salk. And then Mike Salk was there for like 9 or 10 months. They move out Mike Salk. They bring back Dale. They move us. They bring back Dale. Then they bring in Rich Keefe, and they're doing things in the middays. They brought in a midday guy to take him out. I said, and I wrote all this stuff down, all the things that had happened in like a year or year and a half span. I said, look at this. We look like the Cleveland Browns trying to find a quarterback. Like we're all over the place. It's like some of our practices are just not sustainable for greatness. Now, it didn't tank at that time because there was a lot of talent. Like a lot of people had issue with the morning show, took issues with the morning show, but they were talented.
Yeah.
Couldn't deny the talent that those guys had. And I had issues with them, but I never said they were untalented. They were. We had some really good people there, but after I left and Dale left and Kirk left and Jerry left, they started juggling and they didn't have the vision to sustain it. So that would be my guess. I think a talent drain and then a lack of vision from the very top. I'm talking about ownership. talking about ownership of the company, which in my mind had been struggling for quite a bit.
Why did you leave?
So after 13 years, it was time. And so it was good because most of the time you don't leave a job on your own terms. And I had an opportunity to leave on my own terms. And I knew that day was coming. I knew that I didn't like the way things were headed. Now, I'm not telling you that I knew it was going to get to this point that you asked about. I didn't know they were headed toward bankruptcy. I didn't have that kind of vision. But I wasn't enjoying it as much as I had in the first 10 to 11 years. It just wasn't fun. There was a lot of infighting at work. There were a lot of decisions from the program director that I didn't agree with. There was a tone from the station that didn't align with anything that I believed in. And so my contract was up, and I felt like I've told the story before, but I'll tell. Okay. But not to too many people. I'll tell you the story. So look, in 2010 or 2011, and I've talked to, and I'm not telling you anything that I haven't discussed with Dale Arnold. So in 2011, when they moved me from middays with Dale to afternoons with Glenn, they told me that they were going to move on from Dale, but they didn't tell him. They told me that this was going to happen, but they didn't tell him. So now I'm in this position where I'm like, should I tell him that this is going to happen? And then, okay, I'm the guy who's telling him that he's been fired.
Yeah.
And then, but I haven't been fired, but I'm telling him he's been fired. So I was like, I don't want to do that. But I don't want him to keep operating in the dark. So I would go to them this went on for this is like a month. I said, did you tell him yet? Oh, we're going to do it soon. Did you tell him? Did you tell him? Did you tell him? So they finally told him. He found out that I knew. He felt like I had something to do with it. I didn't. And it was pretty tense between us, but I told him the whole story. I love Dale. We worked it out. Love his family. And so we're good, right? We're good. So now I'm thinking, okay, I get a chance to return the favor here. I get a chance to do something because it never really sat well with me. I was like, should I have told him? You know, I would talk myself out of it. Hey, I should have, I shouldn't have. I did the right thing. I did the wrong thing, whatever. So I knew I was going to leave WEEI I left in March of 2018. I knew I was going to leave in November of 2017. I didn't tell anybody. I knew they wanted to do my contract with Dale's. They wanted to do it together. So I wanted him to get a contract because if I told them I was going to leave, I felt like, hey, maybe they just move on. And if Michael's not coming back, well, we're going to move Dale on.
Yeah.
So I played a little game there. Hey, do you want a contract? Hey, do Dale's contract first. And they thought I was just trying to figure out like how much money, getting more money. That wasn't it. I just wanted him to get a contract. And one time, Brandon, I went on the air and said, it's a shame that a legend like Dale Arnold cannot get a contract from WEEI. I made it public. And a couple people said, oh, this is about you. You're just trying to get a contract. I said, I promise you I'm not. I'm just trying to do it for him. So he got his contract. As soon as I said, you signed your contract? Yes. He said, now I'm just waiting on you, partner. I was like, I said, I'm not going to do it. I said, it's not going to work out. I'm just going to go in a different direction. And it's time. I was at, and I want to say the whole thing was bad because out of the 13 years, as I said, 11 were great. 11 were great.
Yeah.
2 of them were not great. 2 of them I did not enjoy, but 11 I really did. I loved them. I was at the Globe separately. You put it together, it was like 10 years. So 10 years at the Boston Globe, 13 years at WEEI. Sometimes you just get to the point, man. I never wanted to be like the Supreme Court where they're like, could you please leave? Could you please leave? Sometimes you just reach that point where it's time to do something else. And that's where I was. But I'm very happy, NBC Sports Boston. It's a great place.
What is, kind of just speaking about the talent and management relationship, what is Bill Belichick's relationship with Robert Kraft? Because they seemed fine during the press conference announcing that Bill was leaving.
You thought so?
Yeah, it seemed okay. No?
Okay. Just okay. No, they
right. And then you hear the talk about Kraft maybe pushing the Falcons off of him, and then you see them at the Brady roast together. So
that was awkward too.
Yeah.
That was awkward. Look, I think it's very simple, and this is what happens with great teams, great bands, great artists. It gets to the point where you're working together for a long time, and then ego gets in the way. You have some success, and egos will always bring the operation down. That is good. What's the answer? What's the answer for the demise of most things? It's egos. And so that was the demise of Brady Belichick. The ego of Bill, and the stubbornness of Bill saying, hey, wait a minute, I've never seen a quarterback be successful after this successful at 40 years old. Well, you got one now. Accept it. He's the exception at his age, Bill, just like you're the exception at your age for head coaches. I still think Bill Belichick could coach. Bill Belichick could coach. He can coach right now. Now, I don't know if I'd let him run the whole operation, but as a game day coach, as a strategist, as an analyst, fantastic. So Bill didn't recognize that Brady was the exception, and that got in the way of their relationship. And I think Robert Kraft very simply wanted more credit. He wanted more credit. And Bill knew he wanted more credit. And it just got to be, I think in the last couple of years there, it got to be a little nasty. Nasty because Kraft is not getting the credit that he wanted, and also nasty because there are 3 guys, the coach, the quarterback, and the owner. And the owner and the quarterback were like this, and the coach was trying to move on, and the owner and the quarterback were trying to hold their position. It was just very tense, and that's what led to ultimately the breakup. And like, it could have been saved if they wanted to save it. I mean, like, it's like most things. If you have some distance and you're watching people argue, it's very easy for you to be the arbitrator and be like, okay, well, I can see a compromise. Why don't you do that? And why don't you do that? And everything is good. But they didn't want to.
Yeah.
They just got sick of each other. Like Bill, if I'm Robert Kraft, like 3 years ago, I would have taken personnel power away from Bill, but framed it in a way that would be helpful to him. This is going to extend your coaching career. I always want you to be the head coach of the New England Patriots, and this is the way to do it. Except he didn't always want him to be the head coach of the New England Patriots. He wanted to move on. And so where are they right now, to answer your question? Probably courteous. Probably at the point where they're going to be courteous, because they're both going to, by the time this airs, it will have happened. But the Tom Brady celebration in Boston, Kraft will be there. Brady will be there, obviously. So will Belichick. Yep. They'll do what they have to do, but it's not a great relationship right now.
Logan Ryan was recently on Colin Cowherd's show, and he hinted that Belichick's politics might have caused a locker room issue. Did you ever see that as an issue?
I didn't see it as an issue because I was naive. Because I remember talking to guys. I thought it would be explosive. It's 2016. We know what this country was like in 16, what it's like now.
Yeah.
People there's you want to talk about compromise? Nobody compromises. If you feel the way you feel, if you are a political person, you think my side is right, that side is wrong. Period. So I knew that. I'm like, how did you all? And I remember asking McCourty this and some other players, and Matthew Slater. This is long before the dynasty. Said, how did you manage to win the Super Bowl in the same year and you've got to live with people who you vehemently disagree with philosophically. Your head coach is friends with Donald Trump. Your quarterback's got a Make America Great Again hat in his locker. And you guys appear to be close and you can get the job done. Like, how did that happen? And he talked about the professionalism and all that stuff. He gave me that answer. But now the real answers are coming out. It was tension. It was tension, but they were able to overcome it, which is still there was an issue there. I guess they just kind of suppressed it.
What do you think about Brady going to Fox, being an analyst? How do you think he's going to do?
Can we get roast Tom Brady? Can we get roast Tom Brady on the air? I think roast Tom Brady, or I'll just say it this way. Tom Brady relaxed.
Yeah.
A relaxed Tom Brady, not here's my corporate statement. Here's, if I say this, what will this person think of it? He is a savant, just like Bill is. He's the same. They're the same. They're the same guy. Like, they see things that other people don't see. So share that and without apology, and he'll be fine. If he starts thinking about how he's perceived, if he starts listening too much to the Awful Announcing podcast and like, hey, Tom Brady's terrible, whatever it is. If he starts worrying about what everybody is saying or what his friends are saying, I think it will hold him back. But the knowledge is off the charts. The insights are there. So just go ahead and be yourself. I think he'll be fine if he does that.
Do you see any scenario where Tom Brady comes back and plays again?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do see a scenario where he comes back because he didn't want to stop. He didn't. His first retirement, clearly, he didn't want to do that.
Right.
His ex-wife, made him do that. His second retirement, he still didn't want to do it. He still wants to play. I think he's looking for a good situation. I would not be shocked. There might be one more. Tom Brady run. It won't be with the Patriots. But if somebody says, hey, we need Tom Brady, I think he'd be very tempted and he'd probably do it. He just loves ball.
You've been doing your show with Michael Smith on Peacock, Brother from Another, now for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
How long have you known Michael Smith? Does that go back to? Years. Oh, wow.
I've known Michael Smith for 25 years. He is it's almost like he's a family member. You know what I mean? It's like family. I know everything about Michael Smith. Michael Smith knows everything about me. He was I'm the best man in his wedding. He was the best man in my wedding. His oldest, who's about to go off to college now, is my goddaughter. I introduced him. I'm taking credit. I introduced him to his wife. And what he doesn't know is that his wife called me after the introduction for more of a scouting report on Michael Smith. I had to convince her. I said, go ahead. Yeah. He's a good guy. Do it. Are you sure? Because I've known her. Let's see. So I've known Mike for 25, and I probably met his wife probably like 2 years before that. And so it's just a very, it's beyond show stuff. That's just family, man. That's family.
Do you like the sort of freedom that a show like that offers, where you can talk about any topic, or did you prefer Boston sports radio and even Boston television, where like that the Boston sports fan tuning in is expecting you to talk about this specific topic?
Yeah, it's a great question, because at the time it's freedom, but it's a high wire too. I mean, the show began during, George Floyd.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was if I'm being honest, I think that was the reason the show started, just to have some voices, some different voices talking about issues that were happening. It was George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. I mean, there were a lot of things that were happening culturally, protests, NBA players in the bubble, didn't want to be in the bubble. And so, yes, to be able to talk about those issues, there's freedom there, but there's also the knowledge that, there are a lot of people who just, they're not, no matter how logical your points are, they do not want to hear what you have to say on these things. And it's not like a sports argument. A sports argument, I can sit there and listen. I mean, we can go back and forth over, Jalen Hurts. We can go back and forth over Jamar Chase. You like him, you don't like him. But at the end of the conversation, you and I can sit down, we can have a beer, and we'll be good. Some of the conversations we were having, we know the other side of that conversation, these people would not want to sit down with us and have a beer with us. So that took some adjusting to. But I also feel like that is not something you want to keep doing for a long time. You don't want to keep having those conversations and be known as put in that box as that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And that was really, if I had a fear, it was that fear that they would look at me as that guy. That's all he talks about. Well, no, I mean, I can talk about, if I need to, talk about religion, talk about politics, race, music, but also my family, sports, so it's not just always something to provoke you.
Right.
Like some of the conversations, I think, in sports media today are manufactured to get some type of response. And that has some value, but I think that can be a little overrated at times as well. I think it's much more enjoyable for the media person and for the audience when that person is legitimately, genuinely giving you their take on an issue, and it may not be popular, but it's how they feel. And maybe you don't agree with them, but you can appreciate the passion and the thought that the person put into it. I think that's enjoyable to watch and listen to as well.
Were you on Around the Horn with Michael Smith?
I was on Around the Horn. Good old days.
How were those early days of Around the Horn?
What's that?
How were those early days of Around the Horn?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It was the show was fun to do. It had a rhythm to it. I used to describe to people the rhythm. Once you get the rhythm of Around the Horn, it's really even more fun. And it was, to me, it was have 2 points in your pocket and a rebound. So always have 2 points in your pocket. Okay, I'm gonna make this point. I'm gonna make this point. Okay, I'm gonna give it up. Here it goes. It may come back to me. Here's my rebound point. Next topic. So there's like a little rhythm in your head. It's like internal clock. And my winning percentage, Brandon, is still up there. We got to check the all-time winning percentages. It's pretty good. But the people were fun. I was doing it with the Globe people at the time. Jackie was doing it. Michael Smith, Bob Ryan, L.A., Bill Plaschke. Mariotti was doing it from Chicago. Adonde was very good at it. Tim Collishaw, like some of the same people who are still there.
Yeah.
And I think I had with host, I did shows with Max Kellerman and I did shows with Tony Reale. So it was a really fun show to do. And it used to blow my mind how many people would watch it. I remember doing so I was working at the Globe, but still doing Around the Horn. So this must have been like 2003, right before the Patriots' second championship. And my assignment was to put the Patriots in historical context. At that point, they had a 14-game winning streak. And if they won the Super Bowl, that would have been 15 straight wins. And hey, where do they rank among the greatest teams of all time? And so they had me calling, some great coaches for context. And I remember calling up Don Shula. Say, hey, Don, hey, Coach Shula, how you doing? Michael Holley, Boston Globe. Oh, I know who you are. I said, well, Coach, I don't think we've met before. He said, I see you every day on Around the Horn. I said, wait a minute, hold on. Don Shula is watching Around the Horn. What the hell is going on here? But yeah, I mean, like, you'd go in the locker rooms and other people would tell me the same things. If you had a reporting background and you weren't just caught up in the celebrity of it, if you had a reporting background, it was very valuable because, yeah, people would recognize you, but as a reporter, you get information that would be helpful to your day job. So, okay, I'll give you an example. So I'm doing Around the Horn. I was covering a Titans-Ravens playoff game. And the Titans won the game, and they were going to go up, and they were going to go to Foxborough and play the Patriots. And nobody was talking. I think Eddie George had some injury. Nobody was talking about it. He recognized me from Around the Horn. He invites me into the training room. I'm in the training room. He's telling me about all his injuries. He's giving me insight. Hey, man, are you going to play? You going to play the next game? He told me everything. So, I mean, it's great. And I'm sure the people who do it now, they have lots of stories. It's not just athletes. You'll find it's athletes, it's musicians, it's academics. Like these platforms are so powerful. Nobody should ever take them for granted. I know I don't. It's just a great way to communicate with people. If you do it the right way, you can really have a lot of fun with it.
Was there a panelist that you didn't like seeing on the schedule, like somebody that that would go on the show and you were just like, oh, I don't want to debate with this person today?
Mariotti.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I'll tell you why. Because Mariotti is fine. And there's some people like this in the business. They're fine when you're talking to them off the air. Like Mariotti was normal off the air. And then he'd go on the air and he would he would take things personally. He'd get mad. He would really get mad. Like a lot of us, we knew the whole gig of, hey, you've been frozen or you're off the show. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but a lot of it is already predetermined. I don't know if you knew that. A lot of it's predetermined. So if I had a flight to catch that day,
okay,
I might be out in the first round. Okay. So everybody knew it was just fun. It's just fun. But sometimes he'd get eliminated and he'd be pissed. And the producers would say, hey, I think Mariotti is really mad. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. He'll be fine.
How'd you end up joining Max on IMAX?
The real answer is that Woody Page turned it down.
Oh, really?
So I was not the first choice. Woody Page was the first choice there. And he actually told me that we were at the Masters together. So that was a year that it must have been the year that Phil Mickelson won the Masters. Was it 2004, perhaps? Won his first major. And probably gambled on it too soon. All right. Anyway, but Phil Mickelson was at the Masters. Phil Mickelson won the Masters, and I spent some time with Woody. He was like, hey, man, Fox Sportsnet at the time. Yeah. Fox Sportsnet is going to call you, and they're gonna ask you to do this job with Max. I said, how do you know that? He said, they asked me to do it. Why aren't you going to do it? Nah, I'm not going to do it, but they're going to ask you. It could be a good opportunity for you. And I shouldn't have done it. But I think at the time it was more money than I'd ever made. And hey, kids, don't just take a job for money. That's my lesson. But it was more money than I ever made, and it gave me an opportunity to write more, because what I was trying to do, and people have done this in the media, and writers have done this, and I respect it. I wasn't able to do it. There are some writers who can write their columns and work on a book. I wasn't able to do it. It was just like, it had to be one or the other. So I left the Globe, went to FS1 or Fox Sports Net, and then I was able to write books after, spending an hour and a half on the show. Then I just spend the rest of the time, no weekends. I'd spend all my time writing, and that's how I was able to complete some books there. But it was not a good experience for me because it was not a good fit for me. The show was called IMAX. I was just, I didn't realize I'd be so much of a sidekick. And I don't mind being a co-collaborator. I think that's cool.
Right.
I'm a pretty good teammate. I love being a teammate, but I wasn't a teammate. I was just kind of like a change of pace person. And so I just the show did not put me in a good light. And I don't think the show really was well thought out. And I'll bet Max would agree with that. Now, the great thing about the show is I love Max, and the producer of the show, executive producer, was a guy who did the same role with Around the Horn, Bill Wolf. Those are great guys. And so the fun was working with them, but dealing with all the red tape and dealing with the changes in the show and upper management was very difficult.
So whose decision was it to keep you as more of a sidekick as opposed to a co-collaborator? Like, did Max have say on the show?
But I don't know. But I guess I should have known that going in. Like, I mean, just like I wasn't. That's why I said I shouldn't have done it. I wasn't thinking clearly enough. If the show, what's the show going to be called? IMAX? There's no Michael in there. I mean, there's no, hey, Max Kellerman with Michael Holley, no, it was, that was the show. The show was built around him, but I was so, there are two things, the money.
Yeah.
Okay. The money stood out, and also this need to write. So anything I was looking for a space. So I guess the lesson is, I said, don't take a job just for the money, but the lesson is, don't take a job because you need something else to happen and the job just provides that thing. No, you take a job because you love the job. I didn't take the job because I loved the job. I took the job because it allowed me to write. So it's not really that really wasn't a smart decision, but it was a long time ago. I'll never make a poor decision like that again. And so it's made me a better person and a little bit wiser.
Did you ever talk to Woody Page about what was pitched to him? Was it going to be IMAX with Woody as a sidekick? Do you know?
I think it was the same. I think it probably was the same thing. Which Woody, he plays a jester on TV, but he's a smart dude. So Woody probably was like, no, I can play the clown with Woody, with Around the Horn. There's nobody else's name on it. It's just Around the Horn. And I am, for better or worse, I am a co-collaborator. I'm one of 5 people. We got the 4 panelists and the host. I got 20% of this. My name is showing up as part of Around the Horn, and he did it damn near every day. So you live and you learn to make better decisions.
Did you enjoy working with Max? Did you have much of a relationship with Max before that show?
Yeah. I've always told people that if I just had to rank some of the smartest people that I've ever worked with, he's definitely in the top 5. He is a really, really smart guy. Now he knows it, but no, he deserves to have that confidence. So I enjoyed my conversations with him. And I think, things started to go south, not with him, but with the show, right around the time it was tragically he lost his brother in an accident. And I remember going to New York and just seeing him and saying, "Wow, this is." I'll just never forget the look on his face, and never forget the conversations we had at that point. I knew he was changed from. He was so close to his brother, and meant so much to him. He meant so much to him. So that I think that must have been October. That must have been the fall of 2004. And I said, it's things won't quite be the same after this. I remember having that thought. I kept it to myself. And then I think in December or January of 2005, that's when we learned that December of 2004, January of 2005, we learned that that the show wouldn't continue.
How was the show doing viewership wise? Do you know?
Probably not well. Look, it was a relief.
Yeah.
It was a relief to stop. Honestly, it was. You never. It's like a divorce that. Not that I'm asking for that, but it was like a divorce that needs to happen, but you still mourn it and grieve it anyway. So it needed to happen because I think it had been changed. The show had been changed maybe like three or four different times. Hey, let's try this format. Let's try this format. Let's try this.
In less than a year.
Within a year. It had been changed several times. I think we started we just started. The show started in May? I think it was May of 2004, and it was over by January.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very short chapter. But I'll say this, Brandon, and I will tell young people trying to get into the business, I will tell students this too. You gotta be ready for some punches in this business, in sports media, especially now. You got to be ready for it. You got to be ready for punches. You got to be able to absorb those scars and then keep going and be able to have a lot of things in your bag that you can do. And sometimes it means some reinvention. Or maybe it's some things that you have moved away from in the past. Hey, I do some podcasting. We'll do more podcasting. I've done some writing. Well, maybe you need to do more writing now in this season. Or I've done some TV. Well, do more TV. Well, I've been an analyst, but I've never hosted. Well, you need to host. The business, if you want to stay in it, you've got to be able to kind of adapt to some of the changes because it evolves. The business, it will move without you if you're not able to anticipate and if you can't take a punch. And I can take a punch. So, and the other thing, not only going to take a punch, I just love the business. I love the business. I was put here to do this. Some people say, oh, if I weren't doing this, I'd be a lawyer or doctor or accountant. No, I can't do any of that stuff. I'm just passionate about communication, and that's what I love to do. And so I'll do whatever it takes to keep doing that.
Do you still have a relationship with Max at all? Have you spoken to him?
I haven't spoken. He used to be on. The funny thing is, he used to come on Boston Sports Radio, especially when we talk about boxing.
Yeah,
we can call up Max Kellerman, and we'll talk. Fortunately, I haven't had. In all my years of doing local media, national media, I've never had one of those blow-ups where I just don't talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we're done. So I feel like if I call up anybody that used to be my co-host or that I used to work with, I think it'd be a pleasant conversation. As a matter of fact, Max. We used to do this on the show, and this is why I would call him whenever when it was like Mayweather, Pacquiao, anybody, any kind of big boxing match would come up. This is why I would call him, because on the show, he knows boxing so well. He would say to me, because I don't, me on boxing, not great. He'd say, I want to talk about this fight. I'm going to talk about this guy. This is what if you want to make an argument, this is the argument you make for this guy. I'll tell you everything you need to know about him. Hey, he's this, he's that, he's that, he's that. So bring that to your argument. So he really could have an argument. He'd be arguing with himself. Essentially, I was just taking his notes and giving it back to him, and then he'd go back and forth. Like, he just loves boxing and knows it. And so I always wanted to have his voice represented when there was a big event.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll surface again, but it's just so strange that he went from being one of ESPN's most recognized faces to now nobody's heard from him in a year. Like, no new jobs, no tweets, no podcast appearances. Like, he's where is Max Kellerman?
Yeah, but with Max, now he's the guy. Now, okay, this is what I said. I'm not that kind of guy who would be, off doing something else, being a lawyer. I wouldn't be surprised if he could change careers.
Yeah,
he could change careers. I could see that. And maybe he just got to the point where he said, okay, I'm going to do something else. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. Did you ever have opportunities to go back to Around the Horn? Is that something that you'd be interested in doing again?
I would be interested in doing that again. Yes, I would. How did I forget this? I forgot it. Maybe I've pushed this down so deep into my subconscious that now it's coming up. Now that you asked the question, I was really stung. By some bad Around the Horn news that I got when I first arrived at WEEI. So they wanted me to continue. So IMAX had gone away. So that's in January of 2005. So I go back I remember one of my first appearances back at Around the Horn. And I made a joke about it on the air. I said, guys, I had this dream. Because when I left Around the Horn, I had these long dreadlocks, right? So when I came back, my head was shaved. So in the time I went from ESPN to Fox, I shaved my head and all this stuff. So I came back and was like, guys, I had this bad dream that I went to another network. I shaved my head. Like, what? I don't know. I'm back. And so they all laughed. It was like just a way to make fun of the very short stint at Fox. So I was back doing Around the Horn. It was cool. EEI comes up, the job at EEI. I said, so I'm done with Fox. I'm starting at local sports radio in Boston. And I asked the program director at WEEI, is it okay if on Fridays I do Around the Horn? Maybe I leave the show at noon. Leave the show at noon. So 2 hours on Friday.
Yeah.
Just on Friday. Because, it'd be great for me to keep doing that. And it's great for the station. It'll be Michael Holley from WEEI in Boston.
Yeah. Great way to promote the show.
Nope. Rejected it.
Wow.
And so that was it. That was the end of my Around the Horn career. I did not end on my terms.
Yeah.
It ended on WEEI's terms.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I love doing the show. Yeah, I'd be open to that.
Yeah, someone should try to make that happen. I feel like
Yes.
it'd be big news if you were coming back.
I agree with you.
Michael, thanks so much for doing this. You were great.
Hey, thanks, man. It's always great to talk to you. When was the last we talked? What was it? A year ago or 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
You did the article on Felger. That was fun.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. That is Michael Holley. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.